In this past year of 2024, I have successfully managed to completely quit junk food. And I say that proudly because it has been such a big player in my life for a long time. It has been, I wouldn't say a staple in my diet, but it has been in the lurking in the shadows of my diet for basically my entire young life. I'm 17 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I ate junk food, whether that was candy, popcorn. I wouldn't count popcorn that much, but you get what I mean. Candy, ice cream, sweets, sugary BS, Oreos, Cheetos, like all the classic stuff that you see in a school cafeteria. I was eating it. It made me feel not good, to say the least. It made me fat, unathletic, slow. I don't really have like the best genetics, I guess. And so I wasn't able to really metabolize it like some of the other guys that I know who, even though they eat basically whatever, they can still, like build muscle and look good and like get all the girls and whatnot. That didn't happen for me. And I remember for the longest time I would just eat junk food because sure it would taste good, but it would also be kind of this like escape from my troubles almost, because like this sugary taste in my mouth was almost numbing to everything else. I could just like ignore everything else because it was like sugar and it tastes good. But all it ended up doing was just making my life way worse. And so my goal with this video is just to explain to you how I quit junk food, how and why. And I just want to give you the hows and the whys, because I think that with a strong enough why, you can overcome any how. I think that's the quote anyways. And I hope that this video can inspire you no matter what your age is, even if you're a younger person or you're an older person. I hope this video will inspire you to just remove this BS from your life, junk food, processed, ultra processed nonsense from your life. Because I can basically guarantee you that if you remove it from your life, you will feel way, way better and you will not regret it. So, and like you don't even have to be super strict about it. Like I'll talk about that a little bit further at the end of the video, but for now, let's just get into how I managed to quit junk food this year. By the way, if you find this video valuable, I would really appreciate it if you subscribed or liked and shared, did all the YouTube stuff if you find this valuable. So let's first talk about the few reasons why I decided to completely cut junk food out of my life and why you should probably quit junk food yourself. So the first thing is I realized that junk food did not make my life better in any sort of matter whatsoever. Like, sure, it tasted good, but I think, like I said back in the story, it just made me feel worse. I realized that after eating somewhat clean for a little bit, whenever I would go back to eating junk food, my life would just be worse. like the quality and texture of my mind and my life would just be worse. I weirdly have worse habits because I think the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So whenever you start letting these indulgences start leaking into your life, you start slipping on other things. So maybe my sleep habits started getting worse. Maybe my respect for my parents started getting worse. I started just being more lazy in the workouts. It's just like weird downward spiral that you go in whenever you let these things kind of slip into your life. And I notice that even now, whenever I'm not like super on point with something, with one thing, generally other things start to slip as well. And I think now I'm probably the most locked in I've ever been in my life, but it makes me even more hyper aware whenever something starts to slip. I want to like correct it so I don't start falling down the slippery slope. But just beyond that, like I just realized like they didn't add any value to my life whatsoever. Like, oh boy, I get this like nice, tasty, like stimulation in my mouth. Oh, cookies and cream Pop Tart. Yeah. But what does it really do afterwards whenever I start to feel brain fog and I start to feel stupider and I get fat from it? What value does that really give me? Like genuinely, what value in life does that give me? From like 15 seconds of pleasure to 4 hours of not being able to think as clearly? Not worth it, in my opinion. So I kind of touched on it there, but another reason why is I just want to avoid having brain fog. As a guy who I would consider myself relatively intelligent, that's up for debate, I guess, but I consider myself to be a relatively intelligent dude, and I have for a while. But the strangest thing is whenever I quit junk food and I would have these periods of like stopping eating junk food for a little bit last year, I would start to think so much clearer. I remember one time I went to go run on the track, right? Because I think I was training for soccer. I wanted to get conditioned. I wanted to be in shape, right? And so it was the summer of 2023. I went to the track to do some sort of workout. But before that, I had this like protein mug pancake thing. And even though before I'd experienced some brain fog with it, I thought, oh, it'll be carbs, sugar, it'll fuel my workout. Yeah, like I was coping, basically. But I ate, this protein mug pancake thing with it had a crap ton of sugar and carbs and just a bunch of like whack stuff in it. I ate that, and I swear to you, as soon as I got to the track, my brain just like stopped functioning. I felt so stupid. I didn't even like it was hard to remember what I was even there for. Like my brain became so foggy, my energy crashed because of because the sugar crash. I just felt awful. And so I got maybe like a lap in before I was just absolutely just done. Had I just not eaten that protein, like if I had something way better for me, like eggs or, like some like eggs and bacon or something like that, something that's a little bit more nutritious and less like sugary and processed, I think I probably would have had a lot better of a time working out instead of just laying there on the track like, because my brain just couldn't function and I felt so fatigued, even though I got like decent sleep the night before. It was so strange. And so I just came home defeated because, and honestly, I probably should have pushed through it, but just that level of brain fog is so annoying to me because, like I said, I value my intelligence, but whenever it's kind of like stolen from me because of the food that I eat, it's so hard to go back to eating that food. And that's exactly what junk food causes. It's just this brain fog, this inflammation just in your body. It just doesn't allow me to think. And it's so sad to think that I was genuinely stupider as a kid because I ate this type of food, because I was fed this type of food in the school. Like, like this is that type of like junk. They literally give out junk food for you to eat at the school. It's so ridiculous to me. They're literally making their kids stupider, and then they have such a high emphasis on their test grades, but they can't even think straight because you're giving them just constant like sugar crashes and highs and lows. No wonder they have so many problems in school nowadays. It's freaking ridiculous. But another reason why that I stopped eating junk food was because I found it so easy to overeat them and get fat get fat from them, bro. It's just crazy. Whenever you look at our food system nowadays, how crazy it is. It's so easy to kind of judge fat people for how they are. Oh, you eat too much. This is like just work harder, bro. And for some people there is an aspect of that, like okay, just like start cutting that out, start exercising some discipline. But genuinely, like these junk food is engineered for us to overeat them. Like, especially here in America, there's so much crap in the food, and there's so much crap in the grocery stores with the crap in them that of course it's going to reflect on our society. Like look, there's literally like I think it's like 70 something percent of the average grocery store here in America is ultra processed food. Of course, of course a majority of the population is going to be overweight or obese. Are you kidding me? Is and like it's so ridiculous because they'll even put it like on the freaking cereal boxes. This part of a heart healthy diet. Whenever it has like 15 grams of sugar per serving, that's freaking ridiculous. How can you like? It's just sort of like poor teaching of people that this is healthy for you, and these people like they genuinely think they're eating healthy, right? They're following what their doctor's telling them, what the food guidelines are telling them, and it's not working for them. But they're listening to the professionals, right? They're listening to the people who are telling them that yeah, this will make you better. But it doesn't. It doesn't make them any better. That's our food system now. And that's why I'm personally maybe not trying to judge fat people less, but I just understand why it's happening more often now. I kind of understand it a little bit better. But they're just like they're so easy to overeat, and I just completely avoid that now. I just don't want to do anything with that. I just think it's completely ridiculous to even introduce anything like that into my life. All right, now that we established the strong enough why as to why we should quit junk food, let's talk about the hows as to how I quit junk food. So the first thing that I think that I really did that really helped me kind of disconnect the pleasure and the sort of like, oh, but I can eat this and it'll be okay. Because I used to track my calories a lot, and I used to follow this thing called If It Fits Your Macros, to where, if I just hit my protein goal, I can just eat whatever I want after that, as long as it's within my calories. But I started to adopt a different mindset whenever it comes to food, and I started to realize like this ultra processed food isn't actually food. It's more appropriate to call it a food-like substance. I've heard like I forgot what his name was. He's some doctor that talks about this and like metabolic health and whatnot. But he says it's better to call it like food-like substances because it's not necessarily like food. It's not nutrient rich. It's like mashed together. It's not like food. Sure, you can get nutrition from it. Sure, you can get some like energy from it, but it's not food necessarily. It's a food-like substance. And I think that's a great way to put it. And that mindset shift, along with kind of just understanding the why of this doesn't make my life better. Okay, this is not real food, and it doesn't make my life better. Why am I consuming it? It just puts that question into your brain, and you start to realize like, okay, well, this food is actually super addictive. I should try and wean myself off it and stop eating it, so I'm not addicted to it anymore. I think that's the key mindset shift that was so crucial for me, is just realizing that this isn't real food. It's not food. And whenever you have that shift, it's like, okay, well, then I'm not going to eat it because it's not food. It's like this water bottle, right? Like this water bottle isn't food. I can't like bite into it and get genuine nutrition from it. Sure, they're like, what is it? It's like a stainless steel bottle. Steel is made from like iron and carbon, right? I could get my daily iron intake from this, but is it actually gonna be helpful? No. Like is freaking metal. Like is not food. So if you can kind of separate the ultra processed food from real food in your mind, and you can put the ultra processed food in the pool of, okay, this is stuff that I don't touch, that I don't put in my mouth, like paper or water bottles or iPhones or like literally anything that's inedible, and you just consider it to be inedible, even though you technically still can consume it. If you put that in the pool of like, okay, that's not actually food, so I'm not going to eat it, then boom, you create this mental disconnect from it, and you're a lot less likely to consume it. At least that's how it worked for me. The second how is I started to actually just value the nutritional quality of the food that I was eating. So again, like, it's not real food, so it doesn't have like real nutrition in it, but also just emphasizing the importance of the nutrition from real food is so important, because if you look at the nutrient density, comparing like ultra processed food and just like real whole foods, even, it's night and day difference, right? Like, you get the grain, the cereal products from the nutrient deprived, synthetically fertilized fields in, America or some random country, right? They uses fertilizers and all this nonsense on it. Some pesticides and chemicals, all the stuff that goes into that, right? No nutrients that are actually going into it. It's literally just like synthetically grown so you can get calories. Okay. Compare that to something like red meat, eggs, something that has gone through, like, a lot of nutrients have built up in that system. Like, a cow eats the grass that has taken the nutrients from the ground, that has done all this stuff, right? So there's lots of nutrients in that system, right? Even with like fruits and even like vegetables to a degree, right? Like, it's nutrients from the ground. It's not from like, it's hopefully not from like nutrient depleted soils and super synthetically fertilized stuff to just grow it without that much nutrition inside of it. So like, if you just compare and contrast, like, the whole foods are going to win every single time. The third how as to how I quit junk food is I just screw conformity and stopped listening to other people. So there's kind of this weird, and I apologize if this sounds conspiratorial, but I just feel like there's this weird indoctrination in people's brains that they think that, okay, I can still have some sort of like sweets and treats and everything will be okay. Everything will be fine. Everything in moderation. You need to live a little. Like, it's those sayings like that creep into your brain and that make you eat more than you genuinely should. I'm not saying like you need to completely cut out junk food from your life completely, right? For the rest of your life. Okay, fine. Like, if you want to have like some cinnamon rolls on Christmas, if you want to have some cookies, like once a year or whatever as like a treat, fine. But it's the sayings like, oh, you need to live a little. It's those sayings like that give the people excuses to go ahead and, oh, I'll have another drink tonight. I'll have another cookie tonight. I'll have some Oreos tonight. But because of these things they're so addictive, they're so easy to overeat, one thing turns into the next thing, into the next thing, and you fall down this slippery slope. Those sayings and this conformity to, oh, it's a normal thing to eat junk food. Junk food is normal. Junk food is okay. These assumptions in people's brains, it gives them the gateway to an unhealthy life. But I just want to ask you like a question. Are you going to be living a little whenever you eat? Let's just say you eat junk food on a consistent basis. Are you going to be living a little whenever you look at yourself in the mirror and you're overweight and frail because you don't get enough protein, because you eat your food as ultra processed nonsense that doesn't have any protein in it? Are you going to be enjoying life whenever you look at yourself in the mirror and you see an extra 5% body fat on your body? Are you genuinely going to be happy with yourself? Hell no. You're not going to be happy with yourself whenever you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you realize that you've gained like 5 pounds of fat because you decided to live a little and have an extra drink, have an extra soda, have some cookies, right? Like, it's these things that cumulatively build up in your life that destroy you in the long term. And that's why I don't eat any junk food anymore. Like in the future, maybe I'll have a little bit, right? But right now, I'm freaking locked in, bro. I don't have none of that because I'm locked in on a goal of getting lean, getting athletic, that sort of thing. And I know that if I let these things slip into my life, that in the long term, it's going to screw me over. And I just think it's such a sad thing that people kind of expect this stimulation in their mouths on a constant basis. Oh, but like you don't have any fun in your life, Keegan. Oh, like you only eat like whole foods. Like, yes, yes, I only eat whole, real food. I don't eat any other BS because, like, you, whenever you raise the bar of stimulation so high, whenever you eat this other junk food, of course the other stuff's going to taste bland in comparison. But like these things are destroying your life. They numb you away. I think like I told you this in my story earlier. I ate the junk food because it was so stimulating. It basically numbed me from everything else. I didn't really experience real life. So just consider that voice in your mind or the voice of others as the voice of normality, because the normal people will say that. Normal people will call us weird for trying to cut out junk food. Normal people will say, oh, everything in moderation. But I don't think that's a good way of living life, in my opinion. Because the kind of people who say that, I mean, if they're if they're normal people, right, everything in moderation, I genuinely think that's such bad advice, honestly. Because if you look at the normal distribution, at least in America, 70% of people are overweight or obese. That's normality, okay? 30% of people are in the normal-ish weight range. But how many of those people are actually healthy and fit? Probably not a lot, in my opinion. And I don't know. I just don't think you should listen to the average person's advice whenever it comes to this sort of thing, because like they're not qualified for it, I guess. Anyways, I'd say baseline, just eat for nutrition, eat for not stimulating yourself all the time. I'm not saying you need to completely cut it out of your life, but just understand, like, food is meant to fuel you. It's not meant to be some sort of experience every single time that you eat. It's meant to fuel you so you can get through the day, so you can pursue your work, so you can pursue your purpose in life, so you can achieve and become a better human. It's not to sit around and enjoy the flavors that you're eating. Yes, that is a part of it, but but food is not meant for that. It is to fuel you towards whatever your goal is in life. Like for me, the food that I eat fuels me towards my goal of becoming a great athlete. It's not to sit around and enjoy the taste of some eggs or some steak. It's not designed for that. My diet is designed for function over taste. But it still tastes good because I don't stimulate myself constantly with junk food. I don't stimulate myself at all with junk food. So just consider that whenever you're cutting that out. Just have that in your mind. If you have people, trying to like peer pressure or coerce you into eating some food, because they will. It's this weird thing that people do is whenever you are trying to be on a diet and you're trying to stick to something, it's this weird thing that people will do sometimes is they'll test you. Like they'll see if you actually are dedicated to this thing or not. They'll bring around donuts, and it's going to be a test. They'll be like, oh, do you want one? Maybe not necessarily out of like, how do you say it? Malignment, out of malice. They won't do it out of a negative sort of way, but they're just going to slightly test you, be like, is this guy for real? Is this person actually going to stick to what they say? So stick to it, okay? Don't conform. Don't give in to the pressure. Like, that's why I kind of laid out the whys earlier in this video, is so you can have that strong foundation. Like, okay, I don't want to overeat. I don't want to get brain fog. This doesn't make my life better in any meaningful way. It's just temporary pleasure for long-term pain later on. All right, so if you still want to enjoy yourself, I completely understand. But there's a couple of guidelines that I personally would go through whenever you're going about eating junk food, I guess, or any sort of like sugary, carby, like super tasty thing. There's a couple of guidelines that I personally would follow, that if I do end up going back to like eating some like cinnamon rolls on Christmas, or eating cookies like on a special occasion or whatever, right? If I were to go back to doing that, here's how I would personally do it, just to mitigate the negative side effects and to keep it like just to actually enjoy the process, instead of just having it be some sort of like temporary taste in my mouth and making it awful. Like to overall just make the experience better, to mitigate the negative side effects. So the first thing is, most of the sugary or carby stuff that I would eat would come from like whole food plant sources. So right now, I don't eat like any sugar. I don't eat any carbs whatsoever, right? That may be a little bit different for you, but I would say at the very least, if you're going to cut out junk food completely, but you still want something like sweet or sugary, completely fine. Just have that in the form of like berries. Like, blueberries are a great snack to have because they're tiny. You can eat a decent amount of them, but they're somewhat fibrous, so you're not gonna absorb a ton of the sugar from them, and they fill you up relatively easily, and they also taste good. So I would say like fruit, berries, that sort of thing, have that as your form of sweetness, or even like cooked vegetables like carrots or potatoes that are very satiating and filling. Like, that's completely fine. Like, that's real food. Okay, I won't dock on you for just eating real food. Like, I that's completely fine. And honestly, I might go back to that in general. If I were to go back to eating carbs and sugar in general, a majority of the stuff that I would eat would come from those sources. The next thing that I would do, if I were to eat some sort of like sugary nonsense, some ultra processed crap, right? Like, if I were to eat some, I don't know, like sugar cookie you get from Walmart or something like that for some reason, right? Some like cookie cake or whatever, I would actually probably have vegetables beforehand. So I'm not a big proponent of vegetables because I don't think you actually get any nutritional value from them. But the reason why so many people push fiber nowadays is because it actually doesn't have any nutritional value in it whatsoever. It actually blocks the absorption of nutrients in your system. And this is in my opinion, it's a bad thing if you're eating only real food. If you're eating like meats and maybe some fruits, if you're eating vegetables with that, you're kind of just like screwing yourself over because you're not getting the actual nutrients from it. But in this case, if you're eating, junk food, sugary stuff, stuff with like red 40 in it, it's actually probably a good thing to eat vegetables beforehand, because even if the vegetables have some like weird toxins in them or whatever, the fiber in that is actually going to block some of the absorption of nutrients, so you're not going to get an excessive amount of sugar into your system. So I would say for that, it's actually probably a good thing to have some broccoli before you eat some junk food, because not only is it going to block the absorption of the junk food into your system, so you basically just get the taste and then you just like excrete it out later, but you also eat something that makes you feel kind of full beforehand, so you're less likely to overeat the junk food. Less likely. Not saying that it's impossible to overeat it still, though, because they're so calorie dense. So just be mindful of that. But that's how I would do it, honestly, is I'd probably have like a little bit of like broccoli or something before I eat some like Oreos. It's a really whack diet in my opinion, but I think it's just it's a good idea if you're going to consider it. And the third thing, and honestly, I think this is how I would go about it, is don't buy the sweets, don't buy the cookies from Walmart, don't buy that stuff. This, like, one, it is probably more expensive. Two, it's just like there's some whack stuff in those junk food, right? But if you make it at home, it's way better, in my opinion. Not only can you make it like to the serving size you want, like my mom at some point made these like humongous cookies. Like I think they're like peanut butter cookies. Back whenever I would eat those sweets, dude, I would smash those, dude. They're so good. But whenever you make the food or you have like your mom make them or whatever, and maybe you help her make them, it's so much more of like a wholesome experience. Even though the food itself isn't necessarily healthy, it's so much more of a wholesome experience that you can do by yourself or with a friend, or if you have a romantic partner, you can do that, or with your family. If you make that together, it's more of an experience with the food than just the food itself. I think this is an important distinction to make. Is like if you're having a decent experience, maybe you're not eating like super ultra unhealthy food with your family or whatever, but if you have, okay, it's like somewhat unhealthy food, but you're in the process of like you make it together and you have a good time when you're doing it. Maybe you have some friends over and you make some like homemade pizza or something like that. Okay, like that's not nearly as bad as you ordering a pizza by yourself and eating it all by yourself. Like it's more based around the social event than it is the food itself. And I think that's way better. Plus, whenever you're making the food at home, you can alternate the crappy like corn syrup, glucose inverted syrup with honey or just normal cane sugar, stuff that isn't like ultra processed. Even though it probably isn't the best for you because it's still sugar, it's still gonna be the same thing. There's less likely that it's less likely there's gonna be like weird chemicals inside of it. There's gonna be, there probably isn't gonna be like red 40 in it. There probably isn't gonna be some weird, like autism causing chemical in there or some like weird pesticide. It's gonna be stuff that you make. And so honestly, if I were to go back to eating sweets, which honestly I probably will at some point in the future, probably for like special occasions like Christmas, or I wouldn't say my birthday, probably not, but like Christmas or like Thanksgiving or something like that, might have a little something, nothing insane, but just like having a little bit of an experience with the family instead of just eating it by myself, like a bowl of ice cream in my room, like it's so good. So that's how I would go about it personally. So like I'm not super anti junk food, even though I just made this whole video on how I quit it. Like if you have it within reasonable bounds, then it's fine. As long as you don't go crazy and you have like a very tiny amount. I wouldn't say in moderation. I say like such a small amount, it's insignificant in your life, to where like it's such a special occasion. It's rare. It's like not like you have to go out and be intentional. Like, okay, I'm going to intentionally do this with my diet, and I know it's gonna have this. I know it's gonna do this, and this thing, but that's it. I'm not gonna like fall down the slippery slope. That's how I view it, anyways. But yeah, I hope this video has helped you out. I think that I could have used something like this whenever I was a bit younger. I definitely would have enjoyed my life, and the texture of my life would have been a lot better had I quit junk food a lot sooner. So I hope this video has helped you out, man, to be completely honest. So if you like this video, then please go subscribe. I'd really appreciate that. Go share this with your friends and family. Do all the YouTube stuff, to say the least. And I'll see you in the next one. Be better and have a W day.